Angry Libyans are expected on the streets of Benghazi for a third consecutive day of demonstrations against the country's brand new government. Tens of thousands of protesters have been demanding more transparency and honesty from the National Transitional Council in recent days. It comes as public patience with the temporary government approaches boiling point over the perceived slow pace of reforms and ongoing corruption. The city of Benghazi is of special significance, as it was the birthplace of the NATO-backed rebellion that ended the 4-decade rule of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Let's get more on the latest protests and the possible escalation with Sydney-based political author Reason Wafawarova. Well, thank you for coming on the programme today. If I may just start off, so the people of Libya have long wanted reforms. They're now on the streets of Benghazi again, making the same demand. It's only been 2 months since the regime was brought down. Impatience, possibly, at this point?
Yes, one would think it's impatience, but I think what you are looking at there is people that have been expecting change for a very long time. This is 42 years. And the underlying complaint, yes, we do have complaints of corruption, which is a very strong point. But when you look at secrecy, which is a lack of transparency, that is the major accusation that was leveled against the old regime of Colonel Gaddafi. So when a new system comes in, those underlying grievances need to be addressed quickly. So if people do not see a change, then there is that kind of feeling that probably we are getting into a cycle of the same repressive mechanism. So I think people are not only losing patience, through irrationality or anything like that, but the National Transitional Council has been very secretive, and the pace of reforms has been rather slow, and accusations...
You say the National Transitional Council has been rather secretive, and the pace of reforms have been rather slow. As we said earlier, it's only been 2 months at this point. But when it comes to how should the NTC react to a possible third day of protests, are there only really two choices: to tell the people to calm down, or should there ultimately be a crackdown of some sort?
Well, I think a crackdown would be counterproductive in this case. What they need to do is reassure the people that they are doing something about the grievances. So when you look at it, it's a question of priorities. And when you go to Tripoli, for example, it is a question of lawlessness by the former rebels. There is an issue of them being rehabilitated and being rewarded for the effort and for the part they played in toppling the old regime. But there is also a very big question from the civilian population of them going home, and this is the Tripoli side of things. But when you look at Benghazi, people have got a different set of complaints. Priorities are seen as misplaced. That is on the part of the National Transitional Council. So when you look at all this collectively, what they need to do is reassure people that they are doing something about the militias that are, according to the UN, holding 7,000 people in makeshift detentions, and there's reports of torture. Even the Human Rights Watch have complained both about the militias and about the NTC.
As you say, there are reports to the UN that militias are still running rampant. There are reports of torture as well. But the NTC is asking the UN to unfreeze billions of dollars of the country's assets because without them, they struggle to pay government jobs and rebuild infrastructure. Why is the international community being so slow to give the NTC the help that it needs?
I think that is the question now. One would have thought that after freezing those assets, after freezing the money belongs to Libyans. Even when they were still fighting, the question of how that money was being released for the purchase of weapons and things like that, a lot of people, a lot of analysts were not really, they saw that as improper, as untoward on the part of the international community. And yes, you are right. If that money is not released and the NTC have a bigger problem, I think they do have their own internal problems by way of how they've handled themselves as a government in place now. What we must mind is that there is quite a sizable element of former Gaddafi people in the NTC. And we could see with the reaction, towards the announcement for tolerance and forgiveness to the former fighters of the regime. There is that lack of trust that some people actually are transiting from the old regime, and if they do not show any signs of seriousness or any signs of serious reforms, people would still think that maybe we are heading for a continuity of what they used to see.
There are certainly some that have said in the past 2 months of the ousting of Muammar Gaddafi that when it comes to the people who are now in power at the NTC, it's just been a reshuffling of the same old furniture. Mr. Reason Wafawarova, a Sydney-based political author, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you so much.